This is Bengals Central Podcast, keeping you up to date on all the Bengals news. Brought to you by ProFootballCentral.com. And now, here are your hosts, Sean O'Donnell and Chris Rowling.
Welcome to the Bengals Central Podcast, found exclusively on the Pro Football Central Radio Network and brought to you by Onnit.com, delivering everything you need to thrive. I'm your host, Sean O'Donnell, and with me as always, my co-host, Chris Rowling. And before we get into everything today, we actually have some very exciting news. Bengals Central now has official T-shirts. That's right. They feature our Bengals Central logo that you are also familiar with, and they look fantastic. We would love to thank Big Frog Custom T-shirts in Cincinnati, Ohio, for the hookup on these. You can find those guys on the web at bigfrog.com/Cincinnati. We're keeping everyone updated on when these shirts will become available and how to get a hold of one. So after that exciting news, let's get on to the show. Chris, it appears that we're going to be focusing solely on the Bengals roster this week.
That we are, Sean. We're going to be breaking down each position and giving our final projections to create what we ultimately think will be the Bengals' final 53-man roster after Hard Knocks and all of training camp has concluded. We also have a very special guest today in the form of Bengals defensive end Michael Johnson. Definitely do not want to miss our conversation with him. We have a jam-packed show, so Sean, let's get started and dive right into our roster projections, starting with the quarterback position.
Right, yeah, let's get started on quarterbacks. Obviously, the starter is not in question this year. Andy Dalton will be returning as the Bengals starter. There's no surprise there. Dalton has actually been very serviceable over the first 2 years and has actually played a little bit better than what people were giving him credit for. His 47 touchdowns over his first two seasons are only shy of Peyton Manning and Dan Marino in terms of the first 2 years of production. So, I mean, he's in some good company right now. He'll continue to improve with the weapons that he has around him, with the now healthy Mohamed Sanu, the more experienced Marvin Jones, and rookies Tyler Eifert, Giovanni Bernard, and how can we forget A.J. Green. So I look for big things coming from Andy Dalton this year. I think we're going to see a very impressive and very important third year from this starting quarterback. And his backup, which can kind of, I guess, be a toss-up right now because the Bengals are going to typically keep two quarterbacks on the active roster. So we're going between Josh Johnson, John Skelton, and Zach Robinson for the second guy. And to me, I feel that Josh Johnson is going to be the guy that ends up winning out this job. He's familiar with Jay Gruden. They work together while in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Johnson really does bring one added facet to his game that none of the other guys have, and that's that he's a dual-threat quarterback, and he can make plays with his legs. We've seen time and time again, in the Bengals system where, receiver isn't there, Andy Dalton's held onto the ball a little bit too long, goes down with a sack. Well, already Johnson during minicamp and OTAs has kind of showed his ability to tuck the ball and run when he finds himself into some trouble. And I think that's really going to be the deciding factor over John Skelton, who really is his main competition in that area. Zach Robinson, he could find his way onto the practice squad once again for his second year with the squad, and he can continue to develop there. Chris, what's your take on the quarterback situation in Cincinnati?
Yeah, Sean, obviously they're only going to keep two, which is the trend in the NFL right now. Dalton is obviously your starter for at least the time being over the next couple of years. Behind him, I think, you had Josh Johnson. I think that, while they like his ability with his legs and the versatility it brings, and I understand the connection with Gruden, I think at this point in a backup quarterback, they're going to go with experience over versatility. If they want to get versatile like that and throw some wrinkles into the offense, they can let wide receiver Mohamed Sanu do that like he did against the Redskins last year. I think in a backup quarterback, they'll go with John Skelton. I think at that position, backing up Andy Dalton, if he were to go down with an injury, they want someone who is a veteran and is going to be able to come in and win games, because I think they're in a bit of a win-now mode because they're approaching their peak, and now they're going to start hitting a point where they might not be able to keep all of the great talent they have because there's only so much cap space to go around. So I think for being competitive, the sake of being competitive, Skelton gets the nod behind Dalton over both Zach Robinson and Josh Johnson because he, unfortunately, is the best veteran they have to back it up on the chance that Dalton does go down with injury.
That's a good take, and really, I guess, either of these guys have a great chance, and it's going to be great to see that little backup quarterback competition playing out during the duration of Hard Knocks. Let's move on now to running backs, and really, I feel that there's two guys who really have clinched a roster spot already, obviously, and that's been Jarvis Green-Ellis and Giovanni Bernard. Those are the two guys that are going to be featured in this Bengals backfield for the duration of the 2013 season. Whether you have, Green-Ellis getting more carries or Bernard getting more carries at this point, we know that they're both going to be back there. Those guys have solidified roster spots. And the way it looks right now is the Bengals, between running backs and fullbacks, they keep 4 guys on the roster. And this year, I'm going to kind of lump fullbacks and running backs into one big category here because of the 4 backs that the Bengals will be keeping this year, I see them all being running backs. I don't see the Bengals keeping a fullback on the roster this year, which means Chris Presley and John Connor will both, be roster casualties at some point in training camp. Because the way this offense is developing, it's becoming more explosive, and it's relying on more playmakers who can run and catch and block. And what that really leads to is, instead of a fullback, is more of an H-back position, which should be filled by certain guys on the squad that we will get to in a short while. So back to running backs. Now that we know we're keeping 4 of them, and Green-Ellis and Bernard already have 2 of those spots, where do we go for the next 2 guys? Well, for the third spot, I like Cedric Pierman. It's a toss-up between Pierman and Herron right now because they really are very similar players in terms of their production on special teams. They both showed great flashes last year, whether it's one of Pierman's runs on a fake punt or one of Herron's great punt blocks. I think Pierman edges him out, though. I think he's more of an athletic guy. I think he can do a little bit more than Herron can do at this point. Herron's upside might be greater in the long run, but I guess Pierman is kind of the guy right now as far as I'm concerned in that special teams role. And then for the 4th spot, I like Rex Burkhead, late-round pick, running back out of Nebraska. I think that he has a great chance of making this roster. Not really primarily as a running back. I mean, I think he might see some reps in the backfield there, but I think more as an H-back. Burkhead has some nice hands. He has great vision, and he's a bigger guy that, has the ability to block if necessary. And I think that Burkhead could flourish as an H-back in Cincinnati and see some time either in the fullback position in the backfield or even up in a tight end type of position in certain formations. Chris, how do you see this whole running back scenario playing out this year?
Yeah, I'm with you as far as fullbacks go. As good as Chris Presley has been in certain situations, I think they're doing away with that traditional position, and that's going to go to Orson Charles. Running back, I think, is actually one of the more difficult positions to predict this year. Like you said, there's 2 locks in the law firm and Bernard, which I think you'll see a 60-40 split at most, respectively, there. After that, it's kind of a toss-up. I think, Cedric Pierman at this point is a known commodity. They could go with maybe more upside in Dan Herron, and Bernard Scott could even sneak on the roster despite his age and his recent injury because he's looked effective on kick returns before. So it's kind of a toss-up, and I will say I think in the media and myself, I'm very guilty of this. I think we're starting to take Rex Burkhead's lock on the roster for granted here. I mean, he's Brian Leonard 2.0, but if he could be someone they could try to stash on the practice squad for a year. I think if I had to choose today, I would go with what you said, Sean. I'd give Pierman and Burkhead the last 2 spots, but I think, unfortunately, this is the type of position where I think you're going to see an injury give someone else a spot. That's just the nature of the position, the nature of the training camps. for now, Pierman is the known commodity, and they'll take him. With Burkhead and Herron, I'm not really sure on which way they're going to go with that right now because, as you'll remember, Herron was just electric on special teams, especially when it came to defending kicks and things of that nature. So it's kind of a toss-up, but if I absolutely had to pick today, it's Pierman and Burkhead, like you said, Sean.
All right, so we're 2 for 2 so far here, Chris. Well, actually, 1 for 2. I forgot that you had Skelton originally. Okay, so we're not 2 for 2, but that's what makes it great, though, with predicting these roster battles at this point in time in the year. All right, so let's move on to the tight end position now. And I think typically this year the Bengals will be looking to keep 3 tight ends. They've got 4 on the roster right now. Well, technically I guess they've got 5, but they've got 4 with actual chances of making the team, let's say. And obviously there are, again, this is a position where there's 2 absolute locks to make the team, and that's Jermaine Gresham, the incumbent starter, and Tyler Eifert, the first-round draft pick of 2013. Those guys are going to be featured heavily this year, I believe, in the Bengals offense. We're hoping to see some 2 tight end sets involving both of these guys on the field for the same amount of time. It could be exciting, actually, with Gresham and Eifert. And one thing that I noticed the other day, really, Chris, that I never noticed before, and it's actually kind of funny, is that the last great duo I think that the Bengals had on the offensive side of the ball was Chad Johnson and T.J. Houshmandzadeh. And they wore numbers 85 and 84, respectively. So do Jermaine Gresham and Tyler Eifert. They are 84 and 85 right there. So, yeah, I think that's kind of neat. So we could see a tight end duo emerging with the same numbers as the last great wide receiver duo of the Cincinnati Bengals. So that's kind of cool in itself. Those guys will make the roster, obviously. I think they'll see a lot of playing time this year. We'll see a lot of offensive schemes that highlight these guys and that feature these guys. And the third tight end, obviously, would be between Orson Charles and veteran Alex Smith, who came over from Cleveland. And I've got to give it to Charles here because I really see the Bengals using Charles strongly as an H-back this year. They've already had him in the H-back position during OTAs. They've been working him there. And the great thing with Charles as an H-back is that he's very familiar with being an H-back. He did it in Georgia. And pound for pound, this guy might be one of the best blockers on the team. He's got perfectly great hands. I mean, he's so sure-handed. He makes such a great outlet for Andy Dalton. And he'd be just such a great commodity to have back there coming out of the backfield, whether it's blocking for the run or whether it's providing another outlet for the offense. So I think Orson Charles gets the nod over Alex Smith. So our 3 tight ends this year will be Jermaine Gresham, Tyler Eifert, and Orson Charles. Chris, what's your take on the position?
Yeah, a little off track here, but you got me on the numbers game now with the 85 and 84, and the man throwing them the ball was number 9 in Carson Palmer. And the man wearing number 9 now at quarterback for Cincinnati is John Skelton. So just a little food for thought to throw out there. So I don't know what that means. Hopefully nothing. But as far as tight ends go, I think you're right. I think there's 3. I'm of the opinion that there's the 3 positions already locked in. There's not just 2 locks. There's 3 locks because there's absolutely no excuse for the Bengals to let a talent like Orson Charles go. He'll be behind Gresham and Eifert in that H-back role, like you said. He'll fill in at fullback. He'll be a hybrid. Pound for pound, probably the best blocker on the team. I know you already hit on that. He's going to add some versatility. He could even see the field with Gresham and Eifert at the same time, which is going to cause a lot of different wrinkles and some preparation issues for opposing defenses. I know we've heard rumblings that Alex Smith has impressed this preseason, but that's training camp talk. He's a savvy veteran, but I don't think he has the upside that they're looking for at this point. Richard Quinn, he's training camp body unless there's an injury, which hopefully there won't be. So for me, it's Gresham, Eifert, and Charles, with Charles kind of floating around the different spots, like you said.
Cool. All right. Well, we're kind of in agreement for the most part here. Let's see if that continues as we come upon possibly one of the most difficult positions to predict for Cincinnati, and this has been really over the past couple of years, and that's wide receiver. This year, like they have for the past 2-3 years, Cincinnati just has a tremendous amount of talent at the wide receiver position. In fact, currently they have 11 wide receivers on the roster, and will most likely only keep 6 of them. So that means 5 talented wide receivers are either going away, or they will be there'll be an attempt to stash them on the practice squad. So, there are some locks here. I believe there are 4 locks so far in the wide receiver position. Obviously, A.J. Green is a lock. I mean, that goes without saying. He's possibly the best wide receiver in the league, maybe the second best after Calvin Johnson, but, I mean, the guy is just an absolute animal. He's terrific. Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones, the 2 second-year players, those guys will absolutely be sticking around this year. Sanu was electric last year, especially in the red zone when he had 4 touchdowns in a 3-game span. Unfortunately, he had a stress fracture in his foot, which caused him to miss the rest of the season. He is now healthy again, and I look for him to be a very solid contributor all throughout the 2013 season. Marvin Jones did a great job stepping in after Sanu's injury at the end of 2012. He really created some nice chemistry with Andy Dalton over the past few weeks and proved himself to be a reliable target. And aside from A.J. Green, he's one of the faster outside receivers on the team. So I think Marvin Jones will absolutely be sticking around. And then you've got Andrew Hawkins. He's the incumbent slot guy, and he's one of those dangerous guys the Bengals have on the roster in terms of getting the ball in space. I mean, we all saw that last season when I think it was in week 2 and 3, I think, or 3 and 4, one of the two, when Hawkins had 2 touchdowns really back-to-back of over 50-plus yards, and they were basically, him just scrambling like crazy after the catch. He's going to be a guy that's going to stick around because of those abilities and also because of his tremendous contributions on special teams as a gunner. And those are the 4 locks. We have 6 positions, which means now we have 2 positions left, but we've got 7 wide receivers that are still without a home on this roster. And that's where it becomes tough. For my number 5, I love 2013 6th-round draft pick, Kobe Hamilton. I think Kobe Hamilton has a very bright future. He's already received a tremendous amount of praise from the Bengals coaching staff, from Jay Gruden, and he's playing bigger than they expected. He isn't afraid to go across the middle. He's doing everything right, basically, throughout training camp or throughout off-season workouts and OTAs. And I think if he keeps that up throughout training camp, he could start to mold himself into one of those locked positions on the roster at wide receiver. He's doing all the right things. He's impressing all the right people, and he's bringing the skill set that the Bengals are looking for in terms of adding depth at that wide receiver position. So that leaves us one more spot with 6 more guys to go. And conventional wisdom might say Brandon Tate here because of his abilities as a kick returner. However, I'm not going to go with Brandon Tate. I have a reason for that, which will be coming around later in the show. I'm going to go with Ryan Whalen, actually, here. Ryan Whalen, the former Stanford product, he, to me, probably has the best hands on the entire football team, and he's one of the most crisp route runners. To me, Ryan Whalen just screams reliability. I want a guy that Andy Dalton can look at on, if they've got, a short to intermediate play called on a 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4. If they're going to spread wide receivers out, I'm looking at Ryan Whalen as kind of the security blanket in those situations. If a defense is kind of, blanketing the tight ends or A.J. Green, something like that. Ryan Whalen is a guy I think you can really get a lot of use out of even as the number 6 wide receiver, if he would happen to be active on game days. So that's my number 6 guy, the ultimate reliability of Ryan Whalen. Chris, what do you have going on for the wide receiver situation here?
Well, you're not going to hear much of a differing opinion from me, unfortunately, which can be boring. But I actually have the same 6. Green is your number one receiver and the number two receiver in the league, in my opinion. And you have Sanu and Marvin Jones, who, if healthy, are going to be your starting 2 and 3. Jones on the outside, Sanu probably on the inside, moving around. Like you said, special teams for Hawkins is going to keep him there. He'll back up Sanu and see some gadget-type plays. I think Kobe Hamilton, he's an interesting player, and he's the model of what they're trying to do, which is add more speed to the outside and to the position overall. And I think they wouldn't have selected him in the 6th round if they were going to let him go. I think they also, I think it would be very, very unwise for them to try to stash him on the practice squad. You could see a Des Briscoe, Tampa Bay type situation. So I kind of think Hamilton's actually a lock for the roster. And then, like you said, Waylon is ridiculously consistent, and I think he could sneak more playing time than a lot of folks realize next year. That leaves out Brandon Tate. I just, conventional wisdom, like you said, says he makes the roster, but that might just be Marvin Lewis wisdom at this point, hopefully. I think 2 names to watch that are going to try to stash on the practice squad would be Roy Roundtree and Tyrone Gord. Roundtree, really both of them have plenty of potential, plenty of consistency in the college game. I don't think they're really in danger to be swiped by another team from the practice squad. I think maybe in a couple of years we could hear from them. I had a tough time leaving off Dane Sonsenbacher because he's also very, very consistent. But I have to give the nod to Waylon in terms of experience within the system and things of that nature. Sean, are we on to the offensive line now?
Yeah, offensive line, and this is going to be our the last segment on the offensive side of the ball before we work our way over to the defense. And the offensive line is a bit of a tricky situation as well. And, typically the Bengals are going to keep 9 offensive linemen on the roster. The offensive line always is a piece of argument, I guess, between the coaching staff in Cincinnati. And I actually think that this year on Hard Knocks, in some of the coaches' meetings, we might see Paul Alexander and Marvin Lewis maybe go and add it a little bit on how many offensive linemen the team is going to keep, because it's always difficult. Are they going to keep 8, 9, 10? How many guys? Right now, I'm going with 9. And, obviously 9 guys. We've got 5 positions, and we need some guys backing up in there. And I have an interesting take on how the offensive line is going to shake out this year. Left tackle, obviously Andrew Whitworth. He's a blue-chip tackle, one of the best offensive linemen, one of the best tackles in the game right now. He had a little bit of cleanup surgery over the offseason, says he's feeling great right now. I expect a great bounce-back performance for him in 2013. Going down as far as the starters go, at left guard, I think we're going to see Clint Bowling there again this year. It might be surprising that I don't have Travell Wharton in that position, being that he was kind of a highly touted free agent that came across in 2012, although, he was injured in the preseason and was put on IR early, never got a chance to play. Bowling, I think, proved himself. He really improved throughout the duration of the season, and I think that he's going to get a shot to start again at left guard this year. As far as center goes, this is the weakest position in terms of the Bengals offensive line. None of the centers played very well last year, and I'm talking about Jeff Fain, Trevor Robinson, Kyle Cook. Well, Fain obviously is no longer with the team, and really the battle right here is between Trevor Robinson and Kyle Cook as far as the starting center position. Robinson is still recovering a little bit from injury, which gives Cook an early advantage. However, I think that Trevor Robinson is going to actually end up taking this position as we get through training camp and the preseason. He's added a little bit of weight. I think he'll be able to match up a little bit better against some of the larger nose tackles in the AFC North. He, for an undrafted free agent last year, I think he showed tremendous poise, being able to step in there and take the reins as a center, and he got a lot of great experience. And I think he wins back that starting role throughout training camp this year. As far as right guard goes, obviously 2012 first-round draft pick Kevin Zeitler returns, and Zeitler was just absolutely fantastic last year. I couldn't have been happier with him, and really made the Bengals look like geniuses last year, to tell you the truth, trading back to get Zeitler. So obviously he is a stable right there at the right guard position. And then as far as right tackle goes, well, the man hasn't showed up yet. Hopefully he will soon. Andre Smith, where are you? Hopefully we will see him at training camp. I fully expect him to be there, and hopefully he, hasn't blown up into a 400-pound monster. But, he's, another guy that, when he gets his weight under control and he's healthy, he's a blue-chip guy right there. He's one of the best right tackles in the league. And obviously, he just re-signed over the offseason, and, he's solid right there as a starting right tackle. So we've got our 5 starters laid out right now, which leaves 4 positions left. So we got to talk backups here. Well, I already touched on it. The easy one here is Kyle Cook at center. Obviously, it's going to be a battle between Robinson and Cook. They're both going to make the roster. It's just a matter of who starts. So Kyle Cook, he's in there. He's my number 6 offensive lineman. As far as number 7 goes, love Anthony Collins. He's versatile. I like him as a backup to Andre Smith at right tackle. I think Collins is a great commodity to have for the Bengals on the offensive line, so he'll be sticking around. And then this may be actually surprising for some listeners. My 8th offensive lineman is Tanner Hawkinson, the 5th-round pick for Cincinnati in the 2013 draft. Hawkinson has been so impressive, and he's really made a believer out of me. He's played all 5 offensive line positions so far, which is incredible, actually, for a rookie coming into a new system. He's so versatile. I think he'll back up Andrew Whitworth at left tackle, but he'll have an opportunity to back up other positions as well. And, you really can't afford to really cut a guy or try to sneak a guy onto a practice squad that has that kind of versatility, which leaves 1 spot left. And I'm actually going to go with 7th-round selection, Reed Fregel here from Ohio State. Converted tight end, played very well in his limited time at the right tackle position on Ohio State. And I think the Bengals keep him on the roster because of his upside, because of his athleticism. I think he's a guy that would be very, very difficult to sneak onto a practice squad. There was a lot of interest in him toward the end of the draft. I got word that a lot of teams were calling Reed Fregel as the 7th round was going on, saying, hey, if you go undrafted, we want to sign you to the deal, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Bengals, they got him. So it was difficult, between Reed Fregel there and Dennis Rowland, but I'm going to go with Fregel. I'm going to go with youth over experience at this point. I think he's a great developmental guy. And as you notice, I don't have any backups at the guard positions, and there's a really good reason for that, is because guys like Anthony Collins, guys like Trevor Robinson, Tanner Hawkinson, they can all fill in at the guard position. They're not stuck to their positions. These guys can play right guard or they can play left guard, and I don't think there's really a need to keep a guy like Travell Wharton, who is really going to eat up so much cap room for the Bengals. I mean, he has a large salary, and I think with the play of Clint Bowling, he's not necessary to keep on the team this year. And then so that leaves out him and Dennis Rowland, Mike Pollock. He was a good body to have at training camp, but I think he's really just sticking around in case of injury. So if nothing of the devastating nature comes around, he'll be cut during training camp. And then T.J. Johnson, the 3rd center. I believe he might actually be one of the guys the Bengals sneak onto the practice squad and develop over there a little bit. He was a kind of a workout warrior over the combine. I like what he brings, but I don't think he just has the potential to make the roster at this point. So after that long-winded answer there, Chris, what do you have for the offensive line?
Well, I'll stay a little short-winded because I have the same 9. It's pretty clear in my mind how these things play out. Barring injuries or, God forbid, arrests. So I'll just run down the list here real quick. Andrew Whitworth is one of the top left tackles in the league. I look for a bounce-back season. He should put some weight back on and be fine. Tanner Hawkinson, the rookie out of Kansas, is versatile enough to play at tackle and guard. I think they have a hard time stashing him on the practice squad. He's very similar to Whitworth, and I think 2 or 3 years, you could be looking at him replacing Whitworth potentially. They're just very, very similar, and he's in good hands with Whitworth. Guided him a little bit. Left guard, just Clint Bowling, like you said. I think he wasn't necessarily great last year, but he was covered up, kind of playing next to Whitworth, and I think there's not really a better option at this point, which is fine because I think as he's been developing and with the coaching staff watching over him, I think he'll continue to improve, and it's a better option than Travell Wharton. With Wharton, you have a big salary, and we haven't really heard anything about his health, even though he suffered a serious injury at the start of last season, and that tells me that things may not be 100% yet, which at his age is just going to allow him to lose that roster spot. Center, I think Trevor Robinson, undrafted out of Notre Dame, is your starter. I think he got better as the year went on. He's a better option than Kyle Cook at this point, who Cook himself is a very good veteran backup. But I think Robinson at this point, they have to go with upside at center and stick with him there. Right guard, Zeitler was a top 5 to 10 right guard in the entire league last year as a rookie. He's not going anywhere. He's also fortunate enough to play next to Andre Smith, who I think will show up, and everything's going to be fine in that regard. He's manning right tackle. Behind him is Anthony Collins, a very good swing tackle who can back up either tackle spot. And then behind him, I have Reed Fraggle, who, like you said, is versatile enough to fill in at multiple roles. There's absolutely no way he would make it on the practice squad. And you have to remember, he makes Dennis Rowland expendable because he can come in as that extra offensive lineman the Bengals love to use, who is eligible to bring in passes, or catch passes, have you. And considering he was a converted tight end at Ohio State, I think you could see a little bit of that wrinkle along the line, even in the rookie season. And that's something Rowland used to do. Fraggle replaces him. So I have Wharton, Rowland, Mike Pollock, and T.J. Johnson missing the roster. Pollock, in my opinion, at least what I saw of him in Indianapolis last year was just awful. T.J. Johnson, I think, is a very, very versatile player who they'll stash on the practice squad maybe 1 or 2 years, maybe something to look out for if Robinson or Bowling doesn't work out, but he's not on the roster this year.
Nice. So we've basically got the same line going on here, and I like that wrinkle that you threw in with Reed Fraggle being the former tight end, extra offensive lineman who's an eligible receiver, and I like that. I hope we see some of that this year. I like that whole little trickery that a team can pull out every so often. That's very cool. All right, so you know what? Before we move to the defensive side of the ball, I believe we're ready to talk defense with one of the main contributors on the Bengals' fierce defensive line.
Football fans, check out the official T-shirt apparel shop for Bengals Central Radio. Check out BigFrog.com/Cincinnati. That's BigFrog.com/Cincinnati. Big Frog offers 24-hour turnaround and no minimums. At Big Frog, you think it, we ink it. Also visit them at their fabulous store over at Anderson Town Center, 7426 Beachmont Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45255. Hoo-day!
We are very excited to announce that joining us right now for this exclusive Bengals Central interview is a man coming off a career year and an 11.5 sack season, defensive end Michael Johnson. Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank y'all for having me.
Hey, Michael, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I've been to your website, mj93.org, and it seems that your foundation has been involved with many charities. What was the driving force behind your involvement in charity work?
It's just something that I've always been interested in since I was young, growing up, and it carried over into college. Every time they had some volunteer stuff, I was in on it, and it was just a way my mom really encouraged me to I needed to come up with a foundation or something so that I could have something set up to where I didn't always have to do everything on my own, and that's basically how it came about. It was really kind of natural, so that's the way it came about.
It's great that you're doing that, and it seems like, you've been involved with your charity work, especially those charities pertaining to children, for quite some time now. And one thing that I found really neat was the MJ93 Fund. Could you explain to our listeners, what the MJ93 Fund is and how people can get involved?
MJ93 Fund is a nonprofit organization that's based on helping our kids in rural and inner city areas, basically through academic and athletic experiences. I go and I speak to different schools and stuff. We have events. We have writing projects that they do. We just do a whole lot of different things, man. And do a lot of stuff in my hometown of Selma, Alabama, Cincinnati, Ohio, and Atlanta, Georgia, where I went to college. And anybody that wants to get involved with that, you can go to my site, mj93.org. It has a lot of information on everything. I tell people all the time that sometimes I forget everything that, that has gone on. So you can find a list of everything, on the site. And it's just basically a way for me to be hands-on with a lot of the things that are close to me, and that's just helping kids out in whatever way that may be. I had so many people help me out along the way in life, and, this is my way. I tell people all the time, I can't thank all them people that helped me out. I don't even know how many people who all did what for me, but I can pay it forward to somebody else, get an opportunity, whether that's exposure through football camps or whether that's exposure through a Microsoft application workshop, whatever it is that I can help bring a kid that normally wouldn't have that experience, I'm all for it, man.
That's great stuff, Michael. Hats off to you for paying it forward, given the opportunities and moving them on. Let's switch topics here and hit on a subject that our listeners would hurt us if we didn't ask about. Let's talk about Hard Knocks for just a minute here. The last time the Bengals were on the show, it was in 2009, which happened to be your rookie season. What was that like, entering the NFL in that kind of environment under the extra cameras?
I think it made training camp go by a little faster. Don't get it twisted. Training camp is always tough and seems like it's a long grind. But when they started showing the shows and stuff, I remember all of us gathering up where we ate at, and they had TVs out, and a bunch of the guys on the team after dinner, we would sit all in there watching it and just laughing at it together. I think, being on that and watching it, it kind of made us, get a little closer, because that's most time when, you're done practicing and eating and stuff, you try to get to a bed somewhere and lay down. But we were still up, joking and laughing, about the show, and it made things fun. We were still, working hard and stuff, but it made things a little bit lighter, just because, you knew that we were going to be watching it all. It was just fun to just see everything today, how they broke things up. And the Hard Knocks crew is a very professional crew, man. You kind of forget that they're there, so kind of got to watch yourself at times. But that's the fun thing about it, though, is you look up and you realize, oh, man, the camera's right on me. What if I see it? But it's a fun experience, and it'll be the same way this year. I think we got a good group of guys that can handle it, and it'll be fun doing the same thing this year, going back and watching and laughing at, different experiences, different, episodes and whatnot.
Yeah, that's great that you guys took the Hard Knocks environment and kind of turned what could be maybe, some added pressure or stress to some guys, and you kind of, you build a camaraderie around it, and you kind of made it out to be more of a fun experience. And I think that speaks volumes for, the personality and the character of everybody on the team. And, speaking of big personalities out there, in 2009, obviously, one of the biggest personalities that stood out on the team was Chad Johnson. And, however, in 2013, this team is a lot more different. You've got guys such as yourself that are emerging, and other, young guys like A.J. Green, Andy Dalton, Geno Atkins, that are really more of the standout guys who lead more by example rather than, how to bring a big personality to the screen. What are some of the big differences that you think the viewers might see on Hard Knocks between the 2009 version and the 2013 version?
It's gonna be tough. As far as I heard, the 2009 version was like one of the best, so it's gonna be tough to equal that, just because of the different personalities that we have now. We don't have, Chad or whatnot going on, and so it's gonna be a little different. You know, I don't really know who all is gonna be like featured and whatnot, but they're gonna see a hard-working group, and you know, they take it or leave it. But you know, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how, you know, what the storylines are, and how they portray everything and whatnot. But I'm sure they'll do a good job. You know, like I said, man, they're gonna see a hard-working group. We work.
Right on, Mike. Let's stick with storylines here for Hard Knocks just for a second. I think one of the bigger storylines we're actually going to see is you being the franchise player. So they might follow you around a little more than some of the other players. Is there any added pressure you're going to be feeling by these cameras?
Oh, nobody's talked to me about that yet. But I mean, nah, I'm just gonna go about my business. And you know, go to work every day, and you know, if they end up picking me to follow, it may not be that interesting. But you know, it is what it is. So.
Very cool, man. And you know, it's great though, because the last time Hard Knocks came around was in 2009, you know, your rookie year. Now we're coming into 2013. Hard Knocks is coming back, and I think you might be the most you know, improved and well-developed player on that team from between these two Hard Knocks shows. I mean, you're coming off a great year with 11.5 sacks, and you know, we've seen you grow into an every down role at defensive end over the years, you know, after, you know, putting on more mass. And even the coaching staff has said that, you know, this could even be your best year to date, you know, entering in 2013. How do you feel about that, you know, coming into next season?
I feel great, man. Every year, you know, I just try to get better and try to improve on, you know, everything that I can. And that's just the goal every year, just want to try to improve in every aspect, and I feel, you know, that's across the league, but I know I can only control myself and the effort and work that I put into something, so that's what I've concentrated on, and I look forward to bigger and better things each year that I'm in the league. So this year is no different. You know, I worked hard, I'm a team to work hard, and, you know, we'll see what happens.
Speaking of next season, Michael, one thing we have to know is there any particular offensive lineman you're looking forward to going up against next season? Is there any guy that usually gives you a hard time, whether it's in the AFC North or elsewhere around the league?
I look forward to, you know, the challenge of going up against guys every week, man, regardless of who they are. You know, whether it's a guy that nobody really knows or a guy that's, you know, everybody knows. You got to come with your best stuff every week, because it's the NFL. You know, everybody's good. You know, so I look forward to each game each week. Like, it's football season, one of the funnest times of, you know, of life, and like you get to compete every week, and regardless of what happened the week before or even the play before, you get an opportunity to go out there and give it your best shot. And that's what it's all about. I like going against whoever, you know.
Yeah, that's great to know that, you know, you're giving it 110% week in, week out, and you're widely renowned to have, you know, such a high motor when you're on the field, and you know, you keep it going each and every week. And speaking of guys with high motors, let's just talk briefly, real quick, about a rookie that the Bengals drafted this year, in Margus Hunt. Now, seeing him in action a little bit now throughout minicamp, you know, what can you tell us about his game so far? And are you kind of taking the veteran role here and taking him under your wing and kind of showing him the ropes?
Yeah, I think we all are. We got a good group of guys that we're real good about that. You know, we all talk to each other and give each other insight and input on how we think we, you know, if we see something that we each could do better. And it's no different with him. You know, he's one of us now, so we're doing the same thing. And he's going to be a good player for us.
speaking of that group of guys you have on the defensive line, Michael, you guys are often hailed as the best defensive line in football, which probably isn't that big of a stretch considering you guys as a unit put together 42 sacks last season. Do you agree with that notion? And can you talk a little bit about the camaraderie you guys like Gino, Carlos, D'Amato, all you guys on the defensive line have going into each game?
Yeah, we're a tight group. We tell somebody the other day we hang out with each other off the field. We kick it, whatever. And I think all that stuff helps. As a brotherhood. And, we got each other's backs, and, we constantly pushing each other and competing to just, be better. And to put it out there each week that, we are pretty good. And when people look at you like that, you gotta constantly show up and perform. And, that's just what we try to do.
That's well said, because one of the greatest things I think you can do as a defensive unit especially is, push each other to keep them getting better. And one of the biggest driving forces behind that is keeping the same guys together year after year. And, the Bengals defense finished sixth in the league last year. And, most players have now returned to play again in 2013 under defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer. How confident are you that the defense will return to being one of the top-ranked units in the NFL this coming season?
I'm very confident. I believe in the system, and I got confidence. I got trust in the guys that go out and execute the system. So, we just gotta try to pick up where we left out last year. We got off to a slow start in the beginning of the season last year. We can't do that this year. Recognize that. And we just got to hit the ground rolling. I think we got 11 straight start the season out this year. And, so it's not like we had this break in the middle. We can come back and say, we got to regroup and, say lights out. We got to start off, the way we finished last year. We got to keep it going. We got to get off to a better start. I think that's going to be one of the main focuses that we have, going into training camp. We have to start hot. We can't. Zim always say you got to jump in the water. Can't put your toe in. You got to just jump in. We don't have to do that this year.
Sure, Bengals fans are thrilled to hear that, Michael. Why don't you go ahead and let our listeners know where they can find you on Twitter and where they can go if they're interested in contributing to your foundation?
You can find me on Twitter at MJ9Tre. That's MJ9TRE. And also, check my website. It's mj93.org. And that's me.
Great stuff, Michael. We just want to thank you for joining us today. We wish you the best of luck this upcoming season, and we'd love to hear from you at some point again down the line.
Thank y'all for having me. Thank you so much. Who they?
Who they? Thanks, Mike. And that was Michael Johnson. I am really looking forward to seeing him during training camp this year. Like we said over the course of the interview, his rookie season was 2009, the first year that the Bengals did Hard Knocks, and now he's coming off a career year in 2013, and guess what? The Bengals are doing Hard Knocks again. I can't wait to see what he brings this year through the cameras of the Hard Knocks film crew. So after a great talk with a great defensive player, let's go ahead and talk defense. And Chris, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with the position that Michael Johnson plays?
Yeah, let's get right into the defensive end spot here. I think you have 7 or 8 guys vying for what I think is going to end up being only 5 roster spots here. Cincinnati loves their deep rotation, but I think overall you'll see them keep 9 to 10 players on the defensive line overall. I think 5 of those spots goes to defensive end. I think there are 3 guarantees to make the roster right now. Obviously, you have Michael Johnson, the franchise player this year. He's not going anywhere this year. We don't know how his contract status is going to play out, but the good thing that you heard from the interview is his mind is on football and football alone. I think you're going to see another big year from him. I can't forecast the future after that, but I think he's going to be very productive there. I think across from him and the other roster lock is Carlos Dunlap. He's also entering a contract year. If I had to forecast, he'll stick around. I think out of anyone on this roster overall, I think he is the one with the most upside, and I can't wait to see what he does as he continues to develop. He's penciled in as the starter now. He's been taking snaps with the first team, so perhaps this is the year we see him take more snaps than Robert Gathers because he's more stout against the run, and I think you could see him really have a breakout year. Behind him, and my third and final lock for the position is Robert Gathers. They brought him back. He's a veteran leader. He's been around for, I don't even know how long it's been now, but he's very good against the run. And I think after that, you kind of have a toss-up. There's two names who I think could be locks, but we need to see more from them. Right now you have Wallace Gilberry, who was very, very solid in a rotational capacity last year, similar to what guys like Frosty Rucker have done in the past. I think that he has a good chance to stick around. And then you have the rookie in Marcus Hunt, who, in my opinion, he could be considered a lock, but and he's definitely not someone they're going to try to stash or anything like that. So I guess you do have to consider him a lock. He's essentially a Michael Johnson clone. I guess I hesitate to think that he's going to see a lot of action next season, but he's in my mind, if things don't work out with Michael Johnson, they're kind of getting someone in advance to replace Michael Johnson. I don't know that Hunt is going to see a lot of the field, but I suppose you do have to consider him a lock at defensive end. I think if that's your five, with Gilberry and Hunt rounding out the group, that leaves out Dante Moak. We haven't seen enough from him. We hear he's healthy. Joe Reedy has told me that he's healthy, but we haven't seen enough, and I think the talent, I think it has surpassed him at this point. Jamal Anderson, veteran, coming off an injury. Same thing as Travell Wharton on the offensive line. You have a guy like DeQuinn Evans who has flashed, but I don't think at this point, again, like Moak, however you want to say it, the talent at that position has surpassed him. Sean, what are your thoughts on defensive end?
Yeah, my thoughts are the same as your thoughts, Chris. In fact, I would go as far as to say every defensive end that you mentioned to make the roster are virtually a lock at this point. Every one of these guys were so productive last year. And, obviously Michael Johnson had a career year, 11 and a half sacks for him. Dunlop and Gilberry had, I believe, over six and a half sacks apiece. Gathers, 3 sacks for him, I believe, and he was also, one of the most stout run stuffers at the defensive end position. And Marcus Hunt, the 2013 second-round draft pick, and as you mentioned, the Michael Johnson clone, possibly Michael Johnson of the future. He's going to stick around too. And as far as starters go, I think we're going to see Johnson and Dunlap on both of the sides this year. And I agree with you. I'm really excited to see what Carlos Dunlap does this year. I think this could be a big year for him as long as he can stay healthy through a 16-game season. He's a big presence on the defensive line, and he demands some attention there. And having him on the same line as Johnson and Geno Atkins, we can expect maybe another 42 sacks from this defensive line again this year, maybe even more. Gathers, I think he loses out his starting role to Dunlap, but he'll be plugged in certain packages, certain situations as a run stuffing guy. In fact, I would even like to see him plugged in maybe at a defensive tackle position in a passing situation. He's a big enough guy to do it. And Gilberry's been productive, and then Marcus Hunt, I don't think he's going to see a lot of time on the defensive side of the ball. I think his contributions in his rookie season will come from mostly on special teams. Obviously, the guy was a phenom as far as blocking kicks goes in college, and I don't really know if I can expect him to block any kicks this year, but they'll utilize him in those situations. And that leaves out Dante Moak, who he's a freak athlete, but unfortunately, his migraine issues and everything, they just caused too much of a problem throughout his NFL career, and I think that ultimately becomes his undoing, unfortunately. Jamal Anderson and DeQuinn Evans, they both are going to miss out as well, just because of the immense talent that's ahead of them at the defensive end position on the current Bengals roster. So that's what I have going on for the defensive end.
Right on. Right now we don't have a lot of different opinions, which is either a good or bad thing for the team. With that in mind, let's let's move on to a position that I think is probably as easy to predict as tight end was earlier. With defensive tackle, I think they keep four. There's 4 locks and 2 training camp bodies. You know who they are. Geno Atkins, the best defensive tackle in the league. We're looking at a contract extension time now where they're probably, Mike Brown, we're going to have to see if he's going to open up his wallet and give out possibly the biggest defensive contract in NFL history. If you're basing it on Haloti Ngata's contract in Baltimore, Geno Atkins is going to demand more. He's your starter. He's your pass rushing monster. He's your run monster. He is what he is. Great pick. Now it's time to keep him. He's there on the roster, obviously, a lot. Same goes for D'Amato Pecco. I've heard some dissenting opinions in the fan base over the years about Pecco's overrated, Pecco's this, Pecco's that. Pecco's stout against the run. He's the perfect complement next to Atkins. He is your starter for at least 1 or 2 more years. Behind those two, the other 2 locks are the second-year players in Brandon Thompson and Devin Still. Devin Still has boatloads of potential. He is your backup directly to Geno Atkins. He's a pass-rushing machine. We'll see what they can get out of him in a rotational capacity this upcoming season. And then there's Brandon Thompson, who is the direct backup to D'Amato Pecco, more of a run-stopping guy. That's perfectly fine. He'll be used sparingly. Rotational capacity, he's also a lock for the roster. To me, that's your 4. That leaves out a guy like Larry Black and a guy like Terrence Stevens, who you could maybe see on the practice squad. Shaw, I'm not sure if you're familiar with their eligibility, but I think they're guys that could maybe sneak on, especially in case there's injury to the kind of thin position, considering they're only keeping 4, in my opinion at least. Black and Stevens maybe could sneak on back to squad. If not, maybe sit in free agency, be brought back if there's an injury. But, 4 clear locks, easy prediction in my mind. Sean, your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going the same exact way with you. And like you said, this is probably the easiest position to predict on the Bengals roster. Geno Atkins, best defensive tackle in the NFL, hands down in my opinion. I don't even think it's an argument at this point. He's sticking around. D'Amato Pecco, and like you said, there's a lot of knock on Pecco's game from a lot of fans, and I really don't get it. He's a solid guy. I mean, maybe it's because he's not as dynamic as Atkins, but really, who is? Pecco's a great guy to have against the run. He will be sticking around. I think he's a necessity for the Bengals defensive line right now, especially after the loss of Pat Sims in free agency, who was the Bengals, arguably their best run-stuffing defensive tackle. And, second-year player Brandon Thompson, he's really going to have to kind of fill in to that Pat Sims role in that rotational style to stop the run. Brandon Thompson, he might have, the biggest, pressure on him, coming in this year. He didn't see a lot of playing time, especially later in the year in his rookie season, and now he's going to be asked to fill a very large role very quickly at the nose tackle position. And then Devin Still is the backup to Geno Atkins at the 3 technique, and Still doesn't have quite as much of a pressure on him as Thompson does because Geno Atkins is just such a every down player. He will still be spelling out Atkins in certain packages, but he still has a little bit more time to develop into that pass rushing force that the Bengals coaching staff and fans all hope he can be. And that leaves out Larry Black and Terrence Stevens. Both of these guys are undrafted free agents, and I'm not entirely familiar with their styles right now and what they produce, and that's going to be what's going to be great to see over the course of Hard Knocks and training camp in the preseason. If one of these guys happens to flash some great potential, I'm sure the Bengals will do their best to stash him over on the practice squad. But right now, the defensive tackle position is super easy to predict.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's not the story for the next position, linebacker, which in my mind is the most difficult position to predict this year, as it seems to always be. To me, I think they keep 7 or 8 guys. I think it's, there's a lot of talent, and it's very deep. Even, throwaways from other teams like Aaron Maven are here. I'm really high on Brandon Joyner. Schaefer's been bouncing around since being at Cincinnati. He could sneak on. Jordan Campbell is a real big name that the fan base, at least, seems to be talking up. So I'm going to run down who I think are the starting set, or the locks for the 7 in my mind, and then I'll kind of detail who we left out here. First up, weak side linebacker, hopefully middle linebacker, in my opinion, Vontaze Burfict. He's not going anywhere after being undrafted. He's going to be in Cincinnati for a very long time. There's not really a reason to touch on him very long. He's your starter, whether it's weak side or middle linebacker, depending on what the coaching staff wants to do. Next, I think obviously James Harrison is a lock. They brought him in. He's a veteran presence. He gives a certain aura. I believe that's how you say it, to the defense. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do with him. They're going to use him, I think, in certain pass rushing situations in various spots, but I think he's going to be primarily used as a run stopper on the strong side. Another run stopper that I think makes the roster, much to the detest of the Bengals faithful, is Ray Maluga. He's not going anywhere. I don't think he's suited to be a starter unless he starts on the strong side, but he's very, very good against the run. I don't see that changing. He's going to get exposed in pass coverage like always, so he's not an every down linebacker. It is what it is. He's not an every down linebacker, but he makes the roster. Amazing backup, if anything. Manuel Lemur, I think, is a sneaky guy who I think could really go and steal the weak side linebacker starting spot this offseason. He's very good in coverage. He can hold his own against the run. Very athletic. Made Thomas Howard expendable in my mind. After him, I think you have a rookie in Sean Porter who's going to be backing him up out of Texas A&M. Again, he's pretty raw, but very good in coverage. I think after that, I see a guy like Brandon Joyner sneaking on the roster instead of a guy like Vincent Ray. Ray's got the experience, but Joyner has a ridiculous amount of upside, can be used in a couple different roles, and I'd be willing to bet very stout on special teams. It's something he'll have to prove in the preseason, but I really like his chances. My final spot I would have to give to Jason DeMonch, who I think is the rookie not getting enough attention. Jordan Campbell's getting a lot of attention because he was a USC transfer, but I think DeMonch is the guy to watch. I think his versatile skill set is exactly what the Bengals look for, an upside. And at a 7th linebacker spot on the depth chart, you look for upside. You don't look for failed veterans like Aaron Maven. You don't look for guys who are never going to have a chance of breaking the starting spot. You look for guys who eventually could replace your starters if need be, whether it's losing free agency or injuries or something like that. So to me, DeMonch is the 7th guy. The guys left out, I think Aaron Maven, I think his chances of making the final roster really took a hit when James Harrison came to town. Vincent Ray is an expendable piece. J.K. Schaefer, a lot of potential. If he's eligible, I think he'll get stashed. Same goes with Jordan Campbell. I don't understand the hype there, but I think Campbell can stick on the practice squad. Sean, how do you see this compliment?
I see it relatively the same way you do. We have one difference in our lineups, so I'm just going to breeze through them quick. Obviously, Vontaze Burfict, James Harrison, and Ray Maluga at this moment would be your 3 starters on the weak side, strong side, and middle, respectively. That could change. We'll see how that goes through training camp. Love Emmanuel Lemur. He is, I think, the prototypical weak side linebacker. He's a fast guy. He's an athletic guy. He's great in coverage. He's absolutely going to stick around. Sean Porter, draft pick from Texas A&M this year. He's going to be sticking around. He's a developmental guy. He'll probably see a lot of time maybe on special teams, not a lot of playing time as he continues to develop. He's absolutely going to stick around. As far as, I'm going to skip one guy here and then go to Jason DeMonch, who you said you had as your 7. And, you made a great point on you want upside in that situation, and that's what Jason DeMonch brings. He is absolutely a freak athlete. I think he is the Dante Moak that minus the migraines, basically. He's a guy that has the same type of skill set as far as like an edge rusher goes for the Bengals, but without any health concerns. So I think that they will really like him in that regard. My only difference, I guess, here is you have Brandon Joyner in here, and I have Vincent Ray. I like Vinny Ray here. I think that the Bengals brought him back in the same time over the offseason as Mike Nugent and Kevin Huber and Clark Harris, all those guys on the special teams. And because Vincent Ray is just a huge guy on special teams, he's very productive. And I think with the loss of Dan Skuta, I think they need a veteran in there who can really take the reins on special teams and become that contributor. So I think Vincent Ray gets in because they need a guy who can replace Skuta instantly. Joyner, Jordan Campbell, I think those could be guys that you could look at maybe on a practice squad basis if the Bengals could sneak them in there. I really don't see much of a shot for Aaron Maben or J.K. Schaefer at this point.
There you have it. Well said. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't get much easier with the next position here. This is a position that I struggle with every year. I openly admit that. Never listen to my cornerback advice. I don't know how the Bengals coaching staff does it. Looking at the 2013 roster right now, I think cornerbacks, you'll see 6 or 7 kept. They've had depth issues in the past. As far as injuries go, it seems to always be the position hit with the injury bug. I think in my mind they have to keep 7. I don't know where you take another talent off the roster to fit 7, but we'll run through my 6 or 7 here. And I say that, I'll explain that at the end. And number 1 is Leon Hall, quietly one of the better corners in the NFL, continues to be even after a torn Achilles. Doesn't get the coverage he deserves, but applies the proper coverage. Terrence Newman is your veteran. He's a lock for the roster. He's interchangeable. If the play is bad, a strong safety, he can slide over there and provide run support while keeping 2 other cornerbacks on the field. Adam Jones is a lock for the roster, given that his most recent stuff with the legal authorities doesn't result in a suspension or something more serious. He's also a great talent on punt returns. He's easily a lock. Drake Kirkpatrick is the guy with the most pressure to perform next year. He's essentially a first-round pick again this year. His rookie season was derailed. I think he's actually your starter across from Leon Hall. He's going to get thrown to the wolves like he needs to be. Obviously a lock for the roster. Brandon Gee, provided he can stay healthy, is a lock for the roster. The coaching staff has been ranting and raving about him again this preseason, and we've seen it before. He has all the talent, all the physical things you want in a corner. He has not been able to stay healthy. The 6th guy for me is actually undrafted, free agent, converted running back from Auburn, Ontario McCaleb. I think his prowess when it comes to kick and punt returns and just his speed and abilities on kick coverage are going to be very, very valuable, and that's what you look for. Number 6 on the depth chart of this position anyway. The name of the game is versatility. That's why McCaleb gets penciled in my opinion. If they decide to keep a 7th, it has to be Sean Prater out of Iowa. He's very stout against the run, which is not something you see a lot in a cornerback, but I think if you had to pick another lock for the roster, it's Sean Prater. I say they keep 6 or 7 because, as I hinted at earlier, this is a position that is always hit with injuries. And so by the time we hit the regular season, 3 of these guys might not even be able to go. So I think I'm going to throw Sean Prater in there as a lock for the roster as well, just because that's the nature of this position. And, if you had tried to predict it last year, you would have gotten a few wrong because so many injuries plague the team. So for me, I think at the least there's going to be 7 names you're seeing right now. Sean, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I love the guys that you picked. Right now I'm stuck on 6 cornerbacks just because of the numbers game we have going on here. I wish it was a 54-man roster because it would make it so much easier on me because this is a tough position right here, because obviously Leon Hall, Terrence Newman, Adam Jones, Drake Kirkpatrick, Brandon Gee, those guys are locks for the roster. I mean, that's a tremendous cornerback core right there. And then you've got a toss-up between Ontario McCaleb and Sean Prater. And as I mentioned early in the show, I do not have Brandon Tate making this roster. And the reason for that is because I have Ontario McCaleb as my number 6 cornerback. As long as these 6 corners stay healthy, McCaleb really won't see time at cornerback during the regular season. He's still converting. He's still getting used to that position. As you said, Chris, he's a converted running back. So McCaleb basically makes the team because of his ability as a return specialist. I think McCaleb becomes the primary kick returner for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's a smaller guy. That's why they didn't keep him at the running back position. They wanted to limit his contact, but obviously as a kick returner, that's not going to put him in harm's way too often. So I think McCaleb makes the roster, which leaves Sean Prater on the outs. He's eligible, but I really don't know if the Bengals would have, a possibility of sneaking him onto the practice squad. He could be a casualty that ends up getting swallowed up by another team. I think he's a great talent, and if they do keep 7, which I wish there was a way they would, then Prater would be the guy to stick around. I wouldn't like to see him go anywhere. Iowa's known for producing some great cornerbacks, and I think Prater could be another one of them.
All right, well, let's move right into the next secondary position here. The defensive backs that you have are the safeties. I think they keep 4 at a maximum. Obviously, Reggie Nelson is a lock on one side. He is a top 10 safety in the league in what is a decaying position. He's versatile enough to play both sides, which is nice. I think behind him, the other lock is Sean Williams, the rookie out of Georgia. Needs to work on his pass coverage, very stout against the run. I think that's how they'll use him. I think he'll be a starter right away. That allows them to get Taylor Mays off the field. I still think he's a lock for the roster. Very good on special teams, can put that elite athleticism and straight line speed and recklessness to use on kick coverages. He'll make the roster. And then behind him, I think George Aoka is another lock. I think he's kind of interchangeable with Jeremy Miles, who has proven in the past to be a special teams ace. But at this point, I think it's a toss-up. I think you could have an injury decided. If coaching staff has to decide it, I think it's going to be the former, not the latter, because just based on upside and potential, because at this point, they know what they have in Jeremy Miles. Sean, your thoughts on the safety position?
I'm right there with you, Chris. I've got the same 4 guys making the roster. The one toss-up, as you said, is Aloka versus Miles. Miles is a special teams ace, but I think the Bengals have enough guys to kind of make up in that area that it's not necessarily needed. I think they need more of a solid safety as far as depth goes, and that's why I'm taking Aloka over Miles. Miles kind of seemed lost at the position when he saw playing time last year, either in the preseason or early regular season. And Aloka, so far, I've actually heard some nice things during off-season workouts about, some nice plays he's made in coverage. So I think he has some upside to him there, and I think Nelson, Williams, Mays, and Aloka are going to be my 4 safeties.
All right. Well, that was a pretty simple one. All things considered, we can move right into the specialists now. We'll keep this quick. This one's really obvious. Your kicker's Mike Nugent. Shocking, I know. Your punter's Kevin Huber, as always. And your long snapper, which does not get enough credit, but he's been around a long time, is Clark Harris. Sean, any dissenting thoughts there?
No, there's going to be nothing there from me. Long snapper, Clark Harris. As you said, underrated guy. He's never really had an off snap since he's been with the Bengals, which is awesome. And obviously, kicker Mike Nugent, punter Kevin Huber. One guy that they have in camp that might be interesting to watch is Quinn Sharp. He is a punter, but he's also a kicker. He's kind of a dual threat guy, and he's a kickoff specialist as well. So I'm not saying he's going to even have a close of a shot of making the team, but I'm kind of curious to watch this guy in training camp on Hard Knocks. Keep an eye out for Quinn Sharp.
Yeah, who knows, right? Could be changing the way the game is played. Saving roster spots for that 7th cornerback.
Yeah, there we go.
Right into the return men here then. Right now, we'll look at the depth chart. Obviously, these guys were already on the roster. Let's think about kick returns here. I think we're both in agreement that the undrafted free agent Ontario McCaleb is going to make the roster at cornerback. I think he's going to be used on special teams, both kick and punt returns. I don't know if Cedric Pierman's going to make the roster, but I think he will be used back there. He's kind of interchangeable. Who knows? They could throw Dan Herron back there, but I will say a name to watch, put back on kick returns next to McCaleb is both Adam Jones and Andrew Hawkins. Hawkins has done it in the past, been all right. But I think primarily they're going to want the kicks to go to McCaleb. Punt returns, Adam Jones is your man if he can stay healthy. He's elite. There's no question. There's no argument there. I think if if he's not healthy or if he's missing MIA for some reason, they could throw rookie running back Giovanni Bernard back there. I personally would prefer if they didn't do that. I'm sure they don't want to do that a lot either, as they would rather keep him fresh for a potential playoff run. But Adam Jones, Giovanni Bernard are probably your 1-2 on punt returns. Sean, your thoughts on the depth chart at returns?
Yeah, I'm there with you. We have McCaleb making the roster for a reason, and that's his return ability. I think, there's no question that if this roster of ours does come to fruition, he would be the guy there, hands down. I have Pierman making a roster. He was the up guy all last year, and he did a great job. I think he would return into that role once again. And as far as punts goes, Adam Jones, yeah, he's the man back there. As long as he can stay out of trouble, away from suspensions, and healthy, he is your punt returner extraordinaire. Giovanni Bernard was a great returner while he was at North Carolina, so I think he could see kind of some backup responsibilities there, kind of keep him out of harm's way a little bit. But if in case Jones loses a rest or something like that, I think Bernard might be able to see a little bit of time back there.
Well, there you have it, folks. That'll wrap up our 53-man, maybe 54-man roster predictions for the 2013 season. A little bit premature, but make sure you find us on Twitter at BengalsCentral and shoot us your thoughts. Let us know where you think we went wrong, where you think we're right, which you probably won't. But let us know what you're thinking. We'd love to converse. We'd also like to announce that the Bengals Central mailbag is coming back next week. So, again, make sure you hit us on Twitter at BengalsCentral. Shoot us any and all questions you may have concerning the Bengals and all things football and just general life advice related, and we'll answer them live on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, remember to check out our sponsor, Onnit.com. As I said before in some past shows, we actually have an easier way to get you some great deals from Onnit right now. Simply type Onnit.com/footballradio into your address bar, and you will receive 10% off your next purchase. Also be sure to check out Big Frog T-shirts at bigfrog.com/Cincinnati. We're really excited to get our shirts in. They look fantastic, and we'll be keeping you guys up to date on that as it progresses. So we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in this week. A very special thank you goes out to Bengals defensive end Michael Johnson for joining us today. Show him some love. Give him a follow on Twitter. His handle is at MJ9Tre. That's MJ9TRE on Twitter. Also, let us know what you think about our roster predictions, as Chris said, by getting us a hold of us on Twitter at BengalsCentral. And as always, be sure to scour the ProFootballCentral.com network for all the latest and greatest news regarding every NFL team. For Chris Rowling, I am Sean O'Donnell. Hooday.
The following podcast is a part of the Pro Football Central Podcast Network. Check us out at ProFootballCentral.com.
Cincinnati's back in the orange and black. See the natty on the map, baby, tell me where you at. In the jungle, Hooday, bringing it back to the jungle. Every game day, yeah, the jungle's back. Got the natty pack in the orange and black. We're stacked to the track, so I'm back behind long work, chugging down cases in a can brewed in '88. Hooday, Super Bowl, spirit of the icky shuffle. Feel it rumble through the king of the jungle. Thunderous roar, he will soar across the river to the Newport shore. From Fountain Square, the great American ballpark. Down at the banks above the riverfront graveyard. The Paul Brown Stadium, the Nat is awakened. And we're making a statement to the rest of the nation. Cincinnati's back in the orange and black. See the natty on the map, baby, tell me where you at.